Okay, so if we could have everybody try and find a seat, we'll go ahead and get started with our agenda today. I assume everybody's here for the pickleball project, right? Okay, you're in the right spot. I didn't catch that. Oh, there's more seating over here if you need, but there's also quite a few spaces in and around if you need to squeeze in a bit. There's quite a few spaces. Okay, well, welcome. This is what I love about Rossmore, to be honest with you. You are a passionate community, a passionate group, and you turn out to gather information, and today really is about information. My name's Jeff Matheson. I'm the general manager for Golden Rain Foundation. With me today is David Masseton. He is a principal at ELS Architecture firm. He's been working on this project with us for several years. So we're both going to go through a lot of elements, and I'll go through the agenda here shortly. But today really is about sharing information. We're not here to try and convince you one way or another about this project. What we want you to leave today with is information, as much information as we can share. There are, at the beginning, many of you came through and were handed or you filled out a question sheet. Please make sure you include on that your email address as clearly as you can write it. We would like to answer as many of those questions as we can. We'll develop a Q&A sheet as well to publish, but also to send out to those that give us their email address. So when you write that question down, please make sure you include your email address so we can continue to communicate with you and provide responses to your questions. We definitely want to try and answer all of your questions. So today, we're going to go through some information to lead off about the project site and design. This is a project that has been around now for over 10 years. There has been a lot of discussion about the site and the design, so we're going to go into detail about that. We're going to talk about project funding. I have been receiving many questions about project funding, and I know there's a lot of questions, concerns, interest about project funding. We're going to try and give you a lot of detail about project funding. We're going to talk about site selection. As I mentioned, this is a project that has been around for quite a while. There has been a number of sites that have been under consideration. So we're going to talk about the process we went through regarding site selection. We're going to delve a little bit into the sound study, the specifics of the sound study that we conducted. But we also met recently with the neighborhood that is up on Tice and other neighbors of the project, and we went into a lot of specifics about the sound study, as that directly was their main concern. So we did meet with the neighborhood to talk about sound. So we'll also touch on it here a little bit, but that was a topic already touched on. And then we're going to get into answering a few of your questions as time permits. But again, if you leave your information, we'll get back to you with answers and publish a Q&A paper as well. So we're going to start off with and talk just a little bit about the project site so you can actually see what this thing proposed will look like. I'm going to turn it over to David to do that.
Great. Thank you, everyone, for being here. It's great to see such a nice turnout for this project. So like Jeff mentioned, we've been working on this project for a few different years and looking at different sites that we'll talk you through. But before we started that process, we were part of a capital improvements project plan where we tried to assess what Rossmore's needs were moving forward over the next 10 and 20 years. And in that effort, we looked at a number of different communities around the country to kind of see what was popular. And as you can probably guess, pickleball is something that has grown increasingly large nationally as well as in adult communities. And so, one of the goals for Rossmore is to try to stay current and to continue attracting residents to this great community. So pickleball was one of the things that we identified when we first went through that study. So the site that we ended up looking at or arrived at is the one that's adjacent to this building, the community center. It looks like there's plenty of space out there with the fairway and the golf course, but there really isn't. It's a fairly tight site, but it is level, which is great from a construction standpoint. And as you can see, there are some trees there along the fairway, but not that many. And our whole goal in trying to design this project was to help it blend as harmoniously as possible with this building, the event center, and with the golf course as much as is practical. So there's parking adjacent to it right now, and when you fit it on the site, we're able to stay clear of the green and the fairway. And everything that we did from a design standpoint was to try to help our building, the new building, work with the event center. So what you're going to see in the renderings of this is that we used the same roof system. We used a standing seam metal roof with the same green color. We made sure from a design standpoint that the peak of the roof was lower than the peak of the roof for the event center, so that again, the event center is the main event in this particular community area, and the pickleball center is secondary. We took there's some wood throughout this building, so we brought some of the wood into the front of the building here at the entry. You can see the main entry has wood around it. And then on this particular side, which is facing the parking lot, it's all open so that we can have fresh air going in and out of the building. And then at the fairway side, it is enclosed up to 20 feet on the south side, and you can see a stucco wall. That stucco wall has the same color that matches the event center. Now I want to talk a little bit about the sound study, which we'll get into more depth later, but the design of the pickleball center, in terms of the height of the walls, the roof, the orientation, everything is designed and based on the sound study and reducing the overall sound impact on the community. The building is essentially a diagram of how to mitigate the sound effects. What you see with the glass is actually a polycarbonate that will allow light in, but if it is struck by an errant golf ball, it won't shatter. It's the same type of product that's used in hockey rinks for pucks. And then we have a concrete base, and then we have some landscaping around the building, which will help soften up the transition between that and the fairway. On the inside, we're using a long span system called a Butler building, and what it allows us to do is cover all 6 courts without dropping any columns within the courts, so it's just free play all around. And then we have a small seating area just beside it, just with a few bleachers. This is really intended for people that are playing or waiting to play. This isn't intended for a large use or a large tournament. Here you can see in the building section, we've maintained a minimum height to the edges of 20 feet, floor to the top, so that we can allow for pickleball play. That is the minimum dimension that we're told that pickleball needs in case balls fly high. And then the peak, again, we're keeping the slope of the roof as low as possible, but we wanted to keep a sloped roof so that it would have at least refer back to the event center. So you can see we're including 6 courts overall, and you can see the seating at the bottom of the plan, the bleacher seating. And then the entry is at the lower center of the plan. And then to the right, you can see its relationship to the event center. And again, we're keeping it tight to the event center so that it does not interrupt golf play and that it works seamlessly with where the parking lot is without having to make any significant changes and incur additional costs. And then here you can see some of the material palette along the bottom, along with each of the elevations. So again, the materials, we're matching the color of the stucco in this building. We're matching the roof of this building with the standing seam roof. We're bringing the wood over from this building onto that. And then we have a chain link fence. We have the polycarbonate, and we have a storefront system for the windows that all attempts to match basically what you see here. So the overall goal of the design was to help make it as harmonious to this building as we could, to have the least visual impact as possible through landscape and scale, and provide as much convenience as we can in terms of the play by doing a wide span structure. So with that, I'll hand it over to Jeff to talk about funding.
Okay, the vast majority of questions that I've received over the last several weeks and leading up to this town hall has been specific about the funding. In the paper, there was an article about this costing $4 million, and certainly that raises a lot of questions, concerns about where that money is coming from, why does it cost so much, and other factors. How much will it impact the coupon? So we'll try and answer some of those here. So funding for this project and capital projects comes from the Trust Estate Fund. This is the fund that consists of revenue from all of our membership transfer fees. That's the fee that you pay when you first move into Rossmore, when you buy into Rossmore, or when a property changes title. The current fee this year is $13,500 per transaction. So last year, in 2024, we actually had one of our lowest number of transfers that we've had, and we still had 399. In 2025, our current estimate is that we will have 400 transfers, and that equates to $5.4 million in revenue into the Trust Estate Fund. The fund also receives other minor revenues, such things as interest payments and lease payments, and that is about another $500,000. So the Trust Estate Fund for 2025 is estimated to have $5.9 million in new revenue in 2025. Again, this is what will pay for this project. The current balance in the Trust Estate Fund is $10.6 million. So that includes a $3.75 million reserve as well. So this is the fund that we use for capital projects in Rossmore. It is not funding that is used for any portion of your mutual. So each mutual in Rossmore has its own reserve fund that is used for your capital projects in your mutual. This fund has nothing to do with, nor can it have anything to do with, mutual property. That's going to be a theme we'll hit several times today. So it's for capital projects as well as machinery and equipment on trust property, anything not to do with a mutual. This is some machinery and equipment, our mowers on the golf course, our vehicles, our lifts, our various equipment is paid for from this. Our capital projects, things like this building we're in here today, the fitness center that was renovated, things as far as capital upkeep, replacement of roofs, our paving program that we do annually. Everything that has to do with upkeep of our existing infrastructure for Golden Rain Foundation, the Trust Estate property, is funded out of this fund. The fund currently has 3 loans outstanding in this fund. These were loans that were used for this building here, for the fitness center, for Creekside, as well as the recycle center. So out of that $5.9 million revenue annually, we have payments on the existing debt, and that is about $1.9 million annually. I'm throwing a lot of numbers out at you. This is information that is discussed every month at the Finance Committee, at the Planning Committee, and reported at the board. So this is information that's also available on rossmore.com if you look under those board agendas. So a few of the things that have been asked. One, can we use these funds to go towards other projects such as fire mitigation efforts or construction of another emergency access? This question probably was asked the most. And can you use this for other capital projects? Yes, you can, and it is. We use this for some fire mitigation on trust property, not on your mutual. We use it for a whole list of priorities on an annual basis. As David mentioned, we did a facilities master plan a few years ago to identify major projects such as this, such as replacement of mutual operations division and other priorities. Currently, we are funding things like the bridge replacement project. We are funding the pool plastering at Tice. We are doing some studies. So there's a number of things that it's currently funding. Can it fund another emergency access road? So as Tom Cashon over here presented last week at the board, we have several emergency access points. We have planning in place for emergency access, either egress or ingress. That is not something that we could totally fund from just this project to add another road. One of the main reasons is we don't own, GRF doesn't own any of the property surrounding Rossmore. So to plow a new road through, to add another entrance or exit to Rossmore would require a significant investment way beyond what this $4 million would do. We'd have to acquire property, we'd have to get right away, a lot that would have to take place. But I encourage you to look at some of the material that is available on rossmore.com. It is available at Gateway or at the Rossmore News or at our other offices regarding emergency preparedness, emergency evacuation, and you will find that there is a significant amount of planning that has gone into this. Can it be used for other fire mitigation? It can, but we are doing a significant amount on trust property already. We just completed a grant program with Contra Costa Fire District to cut a shaded fuel break almost all the way around the community. That is a significant investment and a significant step to make this a safer community. We cannot use the funds, however, to do landscaping around your manors, to do fire breaks in your manors, to replace electrical panels in your manors. All of that is done through your mutual. So these funds cannot be used for mutual property improvements. Can we use these funds to lower the coupon? These are capital projects. Capital must be funded from the Trust Estate Fund. Operating expenses must come from the coupon. The portion of the coupon currently that goes towards the trust or trust estate, or not trust estate, trust operations, there's a lot of terminology that's confusing here. But the GRF portion, it pays for operation of all of the amenities and everything that's not associated with your mutual, is currently $354.52 per month, per manor per month. That's what pays for recreation. That's what pays for the bus system. That's what pays for the fitness. That's what pays for golf. So no construction or capital comes from that fund. And likewise, we can't use capital funds to lower that portion of the coupon. We received questions about insurance. Can we pay a portion of our insurance premiums? We all know that insurance has been the #1 driver of your coupon. It's currently about $22 million on an annual basis for property insurance and insurance coverage for not only the trust, but for mutuals. As I said, this can only go towards trust property, not mutuals, but if you were to even apply all of that to additional insurance coverage, it wouldn't get you much. If you were to apply it to the annual payment, it would be a one-time lowering of $4 million on a $20 million annual payment. So it wouldn't accomplish a whole lot. It certainly wouldn't solve our mortgage issue that we currently have today. So some of the significant questions as well were around how much will this impact the coupon? And as I mentioned, construction capital expenses do not impact the coupon whatsoever. But what does is operating expenses. So once it is built, if it gets built, it will have some operating expenses. Now this is a facility that, as David just illustrated, is basically a metal shed, if you will. There is not going to be staffing at the front gate of it. There is not a whole lot of maintenance to it. What the main operating expenses will be is property insurance, or property taxes, not insurance, property taxes, There will be some court cleaning by our maintenance staff. We'll have to do annual inspections of the fire suppression system. There will be some landscaping that surrounds it that requires some effort. Our estimate right now is that the operating on an annual basis will be about $60,000. That equates to 75 cents per man or per month on your coupon. Just for a little comparison, currently you pay $16.85 for golf, $2.39 for lawn bowling, and $12.38 for the operation of the fitness center. Again, if you go on rossmore.com, you can find a full breakdown of what every department costs on the coupon as a per man or per month. So some people have asked, can we charge user fees for those that want to use the facility? So Rossmore is founded on a document called the trust agreement. And that trust document states that only certain amenities can have user fees, and that includes golf, and we do have greens fees for golf. It includes lawn bowling. Currently, we don't charge anything for lawn bowling, but we could, GRF could, and it includes the stables. No, we don't have stables, but we did. Once upon a time, there were stables here, but that no longer exists. Now, we can charge user fees for exclusive use of amenities. So if you own an RV and you rent an RV space, that is exclusively for you. So we can charge fees on a limited basis, but user fees, we don't charge to go into the fitness center. We don't charge to play golf, to play tennis, bocce, lawn bowling, use the pools. Any of those, that's all covered through the shared cost model and is covered through your coupon. So no, we can't charge user fees for this facility. Another popular question was, the Pickleball Club has 600 members. Why spend $4 million on 600 members? I didn't know that was such a popular question. Wow, I hit a nerve. Okay, so again, Rossmore's built on that shared cost model. There is 600 members currently, but how many years is that facility going to be here in place? 50 years, 60 years, 75 years? That facility is going to be home and entertain residents for many, many, many years to come. So just for a little bit of comparison, lawn bowling currently has 212 members. That is an annual budget in your operating cost just to maintain those greens. Table Tennis Club has 452 members currently. When that building was constructed in 2012, it was constructed at a cost of $1.4 million, and at that time, they had way fewer members. The tennis club currently has 123 members. In 2015, we constructed 2 additional courts plus a social area at a cost of $1.6 million. So it's hard to just say for 600 people you're spending $4 million. The best thing about Rossmore is that it has every kind of amenity, program, service you could possibly want that you might be interested in, and everybody shares in that cost whether you use it or not. You may use the art studio. You may use the art studio or lapidary or a ceramic studio. We just spent $1.8 million renovating those studios. Not everybody uses them, right? So there is that initial cost, but it will benefit the community. Now, one of the arguments also that has been made is why is the cost keep increasing, right? Why does the cost keep increasing? When we started this project, our initial meetings took place out on the courts here at Creekside, and we thought, well, geez, we could repave these courts, we could take some fences down, expand, create, I think it was 7 courts at the time, and all will be good. Well, I think the initial estimate was about $300,000 to do that work. As we got into it, we did engineering studies on the creek impact. We looked at the underlying erosion that was taking place in those courts and what would need to take place. We hadn't yet done mitigation measures for sound, although we did an initial sound study. We looked at then parking. I don't know how many of you are around at that point, but we thought, well, maybe we'll reduce Rossmore Parkway to 1 lane, and the project started to grow and grow. And then we discovered, being that close to the creek, we really couldn't complete the project at that location. Then we started to look at other locations. My point here is that, and we're going to get into some of the other sites, is all of the projects here go through a bit of a journey. We look at a lot of different factors as they come through. This project has been around for well over 10 years, and during that time, we've evaluated so many different sites. We've looked at different options. We've studied the impact of sound and then what sound mitigation would have to take place. So we're going to get into a little bit more about the cost and the drivers, but the planning process involves the project assessment. What is the need? David talked about that in our facilities master plan at the beginning. We start talking about concept designs. We start working with the city in permitting, and we learn about what is needed with this. What mitigations. We start working with the community and hearing what the community input is, and especially one of the major concerns is sound. So what sound mitigation? That's a huge driver to this. And then finally, we currently have an estimate of $4 million. We don't know what the actual cost is going to be until the day we bid this project and get competitive bids back. What we did is we went to a contractor that we've worked with before, and we gave them the plans as they are today, and we said, please give us a competitive bid. But we have not competitively bid this project yet. Once we get permits, we will competitively bid this in the construction market. Once we get those bids back, then we go to the Golden Rain Foundation board and the finance committee, and they will decide whether or not to proceed based on the bids, and they will adopt a construction phase bid. So we don't have authorization right now to go spend $4 million. That is our estimate, and it is only an estimate until we get the bids based on the design that David outlined there. So it's a long process. We go through a lot of different phases, and that's why some of the costs rise. Right now, we're facing potential uncertainty of tariffs. What if tariffs impact the steel market? So there are some uncertainty until we actually bid the project. Some people have said, how could a building that simple cost $4 million if that's what it cost? So we did a little comparison chart here to residential, a single family home. This is looking at construction in the Bay Area on a per square foot basis. So residential typically runs between $330 and $550 per square foot to construct. Multifamily, $400 to $625. There are many, many variables that go into that, so that's a rough estimate. Commercial right now goes for $440 to $750, and based on the size of this project and the estimate, it's $330 per square foot. So what we're proposing really is in line with what costs are for this size facility for a per square foot basis. Now it's a little bit lower here because we don't have restrooms. We don't have heating and air conditioning. This is an open air facility. So there are some cost savings, but that's why it's on the lower end compared to commercial. Okay, so let's get into site selection a little bit. and David and I will both talk to this somewhat. But as I mentioned, this is a journey that we have been on. Some of the criteria that we've looked at. In Rossmore, the main thing is there's not much space to build this type of facility. There is very limited resources in terms of open land to build. So there's a lot that we have to take into consideration. We need to look at the impact on other facilities, common facilities. So if we put it next to lawn bowling, if we put it next to tennis, what does that do to lawn bowling or tennis or the other area? We have to look at the cost of site improvements, so parking, plumbing, electrical, what other infrastructure, drainage do we need to bring to the site? We need to look at adjacent resources. Is it close to restrooms? Is it close to parking? Cost of any type of shade structure or any other amenities. Compatibility with neighboring uses, as I just mentioned, but the main one there is compatibility with the neighborhood. We need to find a location. You're all alone. It was a good effort, though. We need to make sure it's compatible with the neighborhood. And as you all know, that this location has neighbors to the west on Tice Creek. So one of the main concerns is we need to make sure that this is a good neighbor to those residents in terms of sound. Some of the areas that we have considered, we looked at Buckeye tennis courts. Buckeye has 8 courts. It has limited parking and ability to expand that parking. But the main thing Buckeye has is it has residential, like a horseshoe, elevated on 3 sides. The only way to mitigate the sound, and we did do sound studies up there, is basically to put an enclosed building on top of some of the courts. Otherwise, we would not be a good neighbor, as I just discussed. We looked at Hillside at the lawn bowling greens, taking over one of the greens. Same thing. With the neighbors and everything else, we would almost need to put a full building there. We looked out here at Dollar Picnic Grounds. Not quite enough space, but also we would lose a key amenity. We looked at MOD. That's our corporation yard. That's where a lot of services take place. There really isn't space up there that we have ownership and access to that would be compatible with that use. GRF owns property at 1220 Rossmore Parkway outside the gate. We call it the medical center because once upon a time it was a medical center. That property has been suggested. We have looked at that. The renovation of that would far exceed the $4 million that we're estimating for this project. Plus, that's an asset that is under consideration either to sell, it was in escrow to sell for $14 million, or to use for a new home for MOD or GRF and GRF. We looked at a joint venture with the city. There is a Tice Valley gym right outside the gate. We looked at, can we share that use? We talked to the city extensively about that. The rental of that on an ongoing basis, control of that, providing use, didn't pan out with the city in terms of what their needs were to serve the greater population. We proposed a joint venture in the park there at Tice Valley Park. There's a piece of land behind the fire station that we proposed. Why don't we look at that in a joint venture with the city? The city at that time wasn't very interested. They were concerned about Little League and soccer and other things that also may have an interest. So there wasn't a lot of support in looking at a joint venture. And then finally, we arrived at the event center location that we're talking about today. And there was a number of reasons. It's close to parking. It has existing restrooms available within this building. It has open space. It doesn't impact any of the playability of the golf course. And sound can be mitigated. We can mitigate the sound, so it is a good neighbor. So I'm going to turn it over to David to talk a little bit about the sound study.
Sure. Yeah, so as you're aware, sound with pickleball is one of the primary concerns in most communities, as it is here, and a lot of cities are grappling with how to handle that. We have worked extensively with the city in terms of trying to design something that will be completely compliant from a sound standpoint. I want to start sort of at the beginning of the project. When we first started this, we looked at doing pickleball courts that were open, and a sound study was done, and it determined that the sound impact would be too great. So then we looked at an option where we would just put concrete walls on two sides, and we would put solar panels above it. But again, the sound was too hard to mitigate. So what you see today is the product of a number of sound studies which have confirmed exactly where we need to provide protection from sound so that it doesn't leak out in an excessive amount to surrounding residents. One of the things to keep in mind with sound in general, sound does travel in more or less a straight line. And the other thing is there's a lot of just ambient sound in the area. So when an acoustician comes out and looks at the site, they do sound studies and tests around in different locations. So for this particular project, you can see the list of places they put microphones to see what the sound was. And then you can see the range of ambient noise level during the time in which pickleball would be operating. And you can see even without pickleball, the ambient noise level is somewhere around 50 decibels. And so 50 decibels is somewhere in the range of a quiet office space. And then what we looked at is well, if we add our 6 pickleball courts and we add play going, what is the resulting combined sound? So what you're seeing here on the far right column is that we're in compliance for all of the locations with the exception of one during one time, and that was the clubhouse. And what we've done to mitigate that is that we have put a limit to the hours on the use of the pickleball center from 8 to 6. And that meant that, that satisfied what the city need was. We feel that since we're going to put acoustic blankets on the interior of this building, which were not included in the sound study, that it's going to be mitigated even more than what is shown here. But we have made it completely compliant in terms of the sound study and what is provided. So here in this, you can see generally the range of sounds and how loud things are. And I think something that a lot of people don't think about necessarily is just how loud ambient sound is when you walk outside. You have cars going past, you might have lawn mowing going, you've got animals, birds, and all that. And it really does add up to something significant. And so when we're talking about 50 decibels, it really is around the quiet office level. It's not at the height of the lawnmower or the garbage truck or any of those other things.
Okay, so at this point, if you've had an opportunity to fill out one of those question sheets and you haven't turned it in, please make sure and turn that in. We will again develop a Q&A sheet for this, but we have kind of culled through a number of questions and we'll try and answer several of them.
Yes, so just to acknowledge everyone that provided questions, thank you so much. Not most of them, but many of them were already answered in the presentation, so we won't ask again about the appropriate uses of MTF or user fees, the alternate sites sound. So we have some other questions that came in which are a little bit different than that. And so, Jeff, I'm going to give this one to you to start it off. So I was sorting through papers, so I'm not sure if this one was answered. But will GRF be taking out additional loans to pay for this facility? Will we be taking on debt for this project?
So the current plan, as I mentioned, this fund already for the budget that is proposed for 2025 includes this project in the funding plan. So there is no plan to use additional debt funding for construction of this project or any of the projects that are listed in the 2025 funding plan. So at this point, no, there is no interest or no debt funding that will go to pay for this construction.
Jeff, can you talk a little bit about what the approval process has been for this project and how capital projects generally are prioritized?
So we use a number of factors to meet with Planning Committee, which consists of 4 board members, to meet with Finance Committee, which consists of appointed residents, and to meet with the board on an annual basis. We evaluate capital projects on trust property. Again, keep that in mind, on trust property, based on a number of factors. Life and safety, is it something we need to do to protect life and safety? Is it a code compliance thing, like the pools, we have to replaster those, code compliance? Maintenance of existing infrastructure and facilities, and new facilities to meet a growing interest. So there's a number of factors that we look at in terms of presenting to planning, finance, and the board on an annual basis on those projects. We also look long-term in terms of major capital programs that need to be accomplished. So we look at things like the pickleball complex, the mutual operations division, replacement of that building, and we plan for those over a 10-year span of time. So as David mentioned, this community went through a very lengthy process developing a facilities master plan, and that was adopted and continues to be updated on an annual basis. So, lengthy process.
So David, I think this one is for you. Can you talk a little bit about the city approval process and what the city's objections would be to our project? What are they looking for?
So that's a great question. So the city of Walnut Creek has had a keen interest in this project because it is pickleball, and they are trying to do other pickleball facilities within the community of Walnut Creek. So we've been held to a very high standard. The sound study standard we've been held to is higher than they've been holding their own projects to from a community standpoint. We've been through a design review commission. We've been through a site development permit process. We've been through a planning department process. We do plan still to present to the planning commission hopefully in the next few weeks. And then once that's complete, we're almost complete with the building department process. The City of Walnut Creek Planning Department did come to the site and meet with us here to discuss the project, look at the event center, look at the relationship between the golf course, the event center, and the project. And they have been deeply involved in the decision-making process to this point in guiding the project. They have not had any significant comments or objections to the design. They want to ensure that we were meeting the sound requirements that we have, and they made a couple comments about landscape, but otherwise they have been pleased with the project to date.
So Jeff, we had a few questions about operations, because this is something which is going to be in a site which already is really active. So could you talk a little bit about how we would manage parking, and then also address the hours?
Did everybody find a parking space today to come? No? A little challenging. Some of you may have had to walk. So obviously parking, whether you're talking about the fitness center, whether you're talking about Gateway, whether you're talking about this facility, parking's always a challenge in Rossmore. This facility, though, there are over 330 parking spaces in this general vicinity, whether you look at Creekside, on Stanley Dollar Drive, or here between the event center and Dollar Clubhouse, over 330. These are all under the management of Rossmore. So we can manage facilities, we can manage timing of projects and our performances and big rentals. So if there is a big function like we're having here today, where there is a max number of people, we have the ability to say, let's close down that facility during the time that this event is taking place. So it will require some management. It will require some patience in terms of looking for a parking place at times. But the main thing is, it's all part of this community, and we can manage what goes on in order to make sure there is adequate access to all those facilities.
Okay, we have one for some rumor control. I heard that 2 golf holes will be removed due to the new facility. Is this true?
So this kind of falls under that compatible use, right? We want to make sure it's a good neighbor. And one of the things we want to make sure is definitely is a good neighbor for golf in the 18th fairway and 18th green. So no, this does not take out of play. Now, if I'm playing, there's likelihood that I'd be hitting that building or in that vicinity, but they don't allow me on the course too much. But no, this does not take out of play any of the golf holes or the fairway. It is in the out of bounds area. Now, when we do construction, when we have to relocate the main irrigation pipe for Dollar Ranch course, will we need to make sure everything is safe? Yes, but we don't plan on shutting down the green or shutting down the course at any point in time.
All right, here's another one. Why is an expensive outdoor facility with a roof needed when no other outdoor sports facilities in Rossmore have roofs?
Well, that's a great question. The reason that this facility has a roof is for sound. So when we did the sound study, the requirements were to have a full height wall on the west side, a 20-foot high wall on the south side, a full roof, and a 30-foot long, 10-foot high wall on the north side. And that would mitigate the sound to the surrounding residents. So it is there based on that sound requirement.
It also will accommodate solar. So originally we were looking at doing canopy carport solars like we just did at Gateway in the parking lot out here. Instead, those panels will be placed on the roof structure. So we'll have solar on that facility as well as the facility we're in here today, the event center. There was a question, is that part of the 4 million? The solar is separate. However, the process we go through for solar is we've been using a power purchase agreement. And so there is immediate savings and then there is long-term savings. So it is not a capital expense, but it will save the community. And we will be at just about 100% offset for electrical power on GRF meters once that is complete.
Okay. Since the building is not fully enclosed, will courts be playable during the rainy season?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the courts are designed to drain, and during the rainy season, there might be a little bit of rain or water that gets on the courts. We've put a non-skid playing surface that's typical for pickleball on it. And I doubt, because of the extent of the roof and the walls, you're not going to have much water intrusion, even in the event that there is some wind-blown rain. But it will be playable.
Jeff, how does this new facility benefit the community?
So as we talked about at the beginning, is this built for 600 people? No. This is built for the long haul. So this will be here for residents to enjoy currently as well into the future, those that want to. But the main benefit is Rossmore is an active senior adult community with numerous amenities. I hear all the time, every argument for every facility, it will attract new residents. Will this attract new residents? I don't know. There will be some that will go, I love pickleball, it is my number one thing I want to do, and I really like this project, and they may come here. They may come here because they just love ceramics and they are blown away by our ceramic studio. They may come here because they love table tennis, and we have an enclosed building with a specialty flooring and 5 high-end tables. Or maybe they come here because of lawn bowling, or maybe because of golf. So my point is, Rossmore has it all. You have access to so many amenities. And that is one of the things that makes Rossmore, quote unquote, premier. And that premier status is what is a selling point and what makes this a valuable community to live in. There's numerous other factors by like location and security and all of those that also play into it. But we want to stay relevant, we want to stay current, we want to keep our amenities fresh and nice and new. I mean, this facility itself, what an attraction, right? So it will add to what we have to offer, and it'll be a big selling point in terms of keeping Rossmore relevant.
Once the facility is built, will the Creekside Courts and Fitness Center gym still be available for pickleball? And is there any plan for Creekside Courts?
So the 2 courts at the fitness center will remain available. That is a programmed active use area. It's used for pickleball, it's used for basketball, it's used for classes, large-scale classes, and it'll continue to be used in that fashion. The Creekside courts right now, those are heavily impacted by the creek. We just did a little bit of renovation to try and make sure there's no unsafe conditions, but long-term, those are being impacted by the creek. We do not have a plan in terms of renovating those any further or taking them out of service. There's been discussion about converting that to additional parking, but there's a significant elevation change and pretty limited area for parking. So right now, there isn't a plan for Creekside, but that'll certainly be something we evaluate over the long term. No applause for that one? It's all right.
Okay. So we've hit on most of the themes. There's a question that was delivered, which I think might be a good place to end, and it kind of hints to next steps. And so part of it is, can you talk a little bit about what we're waiting, what kind of approval we're waiting to get the city, what that triggers, and ultimately, when does the final decision get made, and what will the board take into their evaluation?
David, you want to talk about the permitting, what's left there?
I'll start with the permitting. So we are approved from the planning department in terms of the main submittal. We've gotten comments from the design review committee, which we have responded to. We are planning to go to the planning department or planning commission on March 13th is currently the date, but we are waiting for a change from the county level because we're making a lot line adjustment, so that has to be recorded, but we're hoping we're going to hit the 13th for the meeting. The building department, we've responded to the last round of comments, so we think we should be clear of that, and same with the site development permit. So we're hoping that by the end of March that we have all the approvals in hand.
So once we go through that process and we get permits, or we know that we're imminent to get permits from the city, the next step is to put this project out for competitive bid. So we will identify numerous general contractors and put it out to bid. That process takes about a month or so, 6 weeks, maybe a little bit longer, shorter? Okay, about 6 to 8 weeks. And then once we get competitive bids back and we vet those, we then present those to finance and to the board, and we develop a project-based budget that's based on all of the various factors that remain, whether it is the remaining design team information, the engineers, the general contractor, any additional costs that go into construction. We take that to the board for award. We then have a process to finalize a contractor with the selected contractor, and finally we break ground. So it is a long process. It takes time, but we will continue progress and look forward to at least getting through the city process and being able to get to that next phase. How long will it take to build?
So we're thinking it's probably in the neighborhood of 6 months, maybe a little bit faster, but I think that's the goal at the moment.
So again, please, if you have filled out one of those slips and you haven't turned it in yet, make sure you turn it in. Make sure and leave your clearly written email address. We will publish a Q&A in the Rossmore News as well. Thank you all so much for coming and learning.